Okay. All right. So I think I got that going. So trusts. Good evening. Tonight we'll be talking about trusts, but not in the cold, complicated, and intimidating way people usually hear about them. We're talking about trusts in a practical way. What do trusts have to do with your paycheck, your home, your children, your business, your savings, your life insurance, the things you're building now, and the legacy you want to leave later? For many people, the word trusts sounds like something reserved for the ultra wealthy, celebrities, or families with old money. That is one of the biggest myths in wealth planning. Trusts are not only for people who already have wealth. Trusts are also for people who are actively building wealth and do not want to lose control of it, expose it unnecessarily, or leave their families in confusion. So, tonight is about helping you understand how to think clearly about trusts, how they fit into the bigger picture, and what to do next. When you hear the word trusts, what comes first to mind?
Legacy,
You,
leaving a legacy for your family.
okay, thank you, sir. That's like family protection.
Correct.
Anyone else?
Protection for anything that you've already accumulated. Because I believe with a trust, you can make it available at this point, this point, this point, this point. So if a person is not doing well, in your opinion, in your eyes, you can give it to them in increments instead of all at one time.
Very well. Thank you.
I also think of security because when I hear the word trust as it relates to finances, I think of, when people say, "Oh, that's a trust fund kid," or "That's a trust fund, family." So it means like they're stable, they're secure, they don't have any concerns,
Okay,
financial
very well.
concerns. Hmm.
Very well. Very well. I like that. Some people, you could also think of, probate, avoidance of probate when you think of the word trusts. You're right. Removing the confusion around wealth and how it is generated, ordered and built for a family. So, what I want to show you tonight is that trust are not one thing. They are tools. And like any other good tool, the value is knowing when and how to use them. So, what really what is a trust? What a trust really is. A trust is a legal arrangement that allows assets to be managed according to rules you set. That means a trust is not just a document, it's a structure. In its simplest form, a trust answers four questions. One, who is putting assets into the structure? Two, who is managing those assets? Three, who benefits from those assets? And four, under what terms will those assets be used or distributed? So, breaking it down plainly, you have about four elements to any type of trust. You have a guarantor, that's the person who creates the trust. That could be you or myself, a business. You have a trustee, that's the person or institution managing the trust. Again, that could be you or me or whoever we elect as a successor trustee. And then we have beneficiaries to the trust, those who you want to benefit from the trust. Again, that could be you, me, or here's sons, children, friends, or maybe charities. And then we also have the trust assets. That's what goes into the trust, such as cash, property, investments, business interests, or insurance proceeds. So I have a quick question. Which of these does either of you currently have or expect to have in the next 3 to 5 years? Children or dependents? I guess we all do. Home or real estate? We do. Life insurance, retirement savings. We have side businesses or entities that we're hoping to grow into business. So we have investment accounts and we want to preserve our family wealth. If you answered yes to any of those, then this conversation is definitely for you. A lot of people think a will is enough when we talk about estate planning. Um, a will is important, but a will and a trust, they don't do the same job. There's so many things a will can do that a trust even does much, much better. A will speaks at death. It goes through probate. It becomes part of the public process. It can name your guardians for minor children. It directs where assets go. A trust, on the other hand, can function during life, when incapacitated, and even after death. A trust can help avoid probate for properly titled assets. It provides asset protection, it provides privacy, it helps to create ongoing control, and it can set conditions for distribution. It can support a smoother transition for business and family assets. So, a will says, here is what I want done. A trust, on the other hand, says, here is the structure already in place to help make it happen. What big concerns could we have? You talked about protecting the family. Miss Brandis, when you said, the creating that trust fund baby, right? So protecting the family is some big concern we have. A lot of times, especially within our communities, we have a lot of elderly people now who have paid off their homes, and they want to leave those homes to their children. But just leaving it, maybe putting those homes in their children's names, or just having a will and having that being the only way, sometimes costs those children money, right? To really claim ownership because their parents were not aware and only did wills. Um, Protecting business assets, keeping things private, making sure your children inherit things wisely, reducing the confusion if something if something happens, or maybe you have more than maybe you have a blended family, you have children from previous marriage and you have children from other marriages, that kind of thing. The trust supports this, and you know it shows us why we should even consider doing trusts. So the trust type matters and why. So we're going to consider several types of trusts in the next few slides. Um, Please write questions that might come through your mind as we go through this. And I'm going to tie this to businesses at the end, because the tool, the trust as a tool, is very, very significant for businesses as well. So I'm going to talk first about the revocable living trust. This is often the entry point of trust for most families. I call it the basic estate planning tool. It helps to organize assets. It helps to avoid probate for funded assets. It allows the creator to retain control. So it's also called a guarantor trust. It can be changed during your lifetime. So as often as you want, as things change, as children grow and really come into their own, and if they don't align with your values and principles, we're more than welcome to switch up how things are distributed, in our trusts. And it supports continuity during incapacity. It's very, very good for the people who have worked and maybe they have pensions, W2, W2 workers. It's very, very good. It's a very good way, the 401k plans and all those retirement plans that we have through work. We can have the trust become the beneficiaries of those. It's good for homeowners, professionals with life insurance and investment accounts. And it's also very good for business owners who want a cleaner succession planning. The key point of a revocable living trust is that it offers control, it offers privacy, um, ease of administration, but it does not offer asset protection from creditors, because the revocable living trust is seen as you, because you are the guarantor for it. But it's a good way to start. It does become irrevocable at death. Now we're going to talk about the irrevocable trust. I love the irrevocable trust for one thing. It's an asset protection trust. So if you have assets that you don't want people to know about, this trust is a very good trust to have to do that. This is a more strategic and more restrictive type of trust. It helps, as I said, with asset protection. It helps with estate planning in the right cases. It helps to keep certain assets the outside the taxable estate, and for long-term planning and wealth preservation. So it's good for folks who have pretty much high income, people who are focused on legacy planning, business owners with growing assets. It's very good for clients wanting a stronger separation between personal ownership and long-term planning structures. So an irrevocable trust, there's several types of it, and we're going to discuss some in a few minutes. It's really a very good asset protection tool. I know you probably heard of, oh, the Rockefellers did this and did that. They used an irrevocable trust, made it own everything, and all they did was control it through a management system. This is something that every one of us can do. It helps us really determine how we want our wealth distributed and how we want that wealth to continually grow within our family. We can appoint people to be managers, and the managers can change from generation to generation. So there's several types of irrevocable trusts, and we're going to talk a little bit about a few of them. The ones that you might be aware of are the irrevocable life insurance trust. This is useful when life insurance is part of the family wealth. It helps with controlling how the life insurance proceeds are received and used. It helps to keep the life insurance proceeds outside the estate in appropriate cases, and it helps the beneficiaries manage what they receive, you know. So it's good for parents, it's good for business owners, and it's good for families using insurance as part of legacy planning. And we have the special needs trust. So if folks have special needs children and they want to plan for them, and plan in such a way that their benefits with the government are not affected, they can use a special needs trust. It helps the loved one with disability. It helps to support them. It helps to preserve their eligibility for certain public benefits and ensure long-term care even after, their caregivers are gone. Then we have the charitable trust and the legacy planning trust. So there's a charitable remainder trust, there's the dynasty trust. These are legacy planning trusts. Um, and these matter to people who want their success to create impact. So it's good for charitable giving, it's good for integrating philanthropy into the family. Then we have spendthrift provisions and protective trust design. This helps to protect inheritance from poor decisions. So within the revocable trust, you can have a provision for spendthrift, which really states this: you kind of guide how you want people to spend the money, but you can also make an irrevocable trust, that spendthrift, that's controlled by management, that helps with asset protection and wealth building at the same time. Why are trusts important? Why should we care? So if we've had jobs for quite a while, we're W-2 employees. Um, are you building well as a W-2 employee? Is a trust may matter because you already have retirement accounts, you have life insurance, you have a home, you have children, you have aging parents. So the desire to avoid probate and confusion at death is very, very eminent. Let's take a real life situation. Someone is earning a strong income, has two children, owns a home, has life insurance through work, plus a private policy, and has started building investments. That person may not think of themselves as one who needs a trust, but if something happens unexpectedly, the issues become immediate. Who manages things? How quickly do assets transfer? What is the process of managing maybe the home that they were staying in? Um, how do the children receive their inheritances responsibly? You know, so trusts are often about family protection, continuity, and thought legacy. So why would a business owner need a trust? Business owners need to think beyond just having LLCs. An LLC can be important. A corporation can also be important. But entity formation and trust planning do not replace each other. They solve problems together. So the trust, as I said, is a very, very peculiar document. One thing a trust can have in the US that it may not have in other countries is an EIN. So you can actually register an EIN for a trust. You can open a bank account for a trust.
Miss
For
Omalola,
the trust, yes.
for a minute, it seems that the audio paused. I saw your mouth moving, but I could not hear.
Oh, so what did you hear last? Sorry.
Um, I heard for us with the LLC, it's not just enough for us how the trust can have an EIN.
Thank you very much. So the trust can have an EIN, and the trust can also have a bank account. Once you open a bank account for a trust and you put in maybe like $25, just a savings account, what you have done is funded that trust and you have made that trust at a person. So when the trust becomes a person, the trust can also be part of your business entity. So if you have an LLC and you can make a trust a member of your LLC, which now changes the tax, the way that LLC can be taxed. When an LLC has only one member, that LLC is called a disregarded entity. Tax wise, that LLC is seen as being a DBA. So that is why if you have single LLCs, you always have to do a Schedule C to add to your personal tax. But if you have another member to your LLC, it helps to change the way that LLC is taxed. It helps to change what expenses you can take on that LLC. So that's just a fun fact about what a trust can do even while you're alive, you know, for you. So an LLC, so business owners risk not, if you don't have a trust, um, there are certain questions that cannot be addressed properly. Like who controls the business if you're incapacitated? Where does where do we determine the business interest pass at death? How does that company continue running? Now, if you have the trust as part of the membership of the business, remember the trust has a successor trustee, and it being a member of your LLC, it automatically ensures the continuation of the business. You know, just by having it to be part of the trust, sorry, part of the LLC. You know, just taking an example of a business owner who has he's operating a company, has personal real estate, has life insurance, has children, a spouse, you know, without having the trust being part of that entity, there's a lot of uncertainty if that person should pass away. You know, it happens a lot, I would say, in Africa because we have this tradition of people just wanting to own and keep owning their companies. You always have one person at the head. Once that one person passes away, it's very, very difficult to determine a lot of things. But if there was a trust in the mix that had everything planned out, everything explained, then that there wouldn't be a problem with that. So, you know. Now I'm going to address some common myths about trusts. Trusts, common myth one, trusts are only for the wealthy. No, trusts are for people who want clarity, control, and structure. Me too. I'm too young for this. If you have income, you have people depending on you, you have assets, responsibilities, you're not too young for a trust. My LLC solves this. Your LLC may help with business liability and operations, but it does not replace trust based estate and legacy strategy. It does not, the LLC cannot be kept alive by itself. It needs something else to keep it alive so that things can operate even when one passes away. And the trust does that. A trust means I lose everything. No, not necessarily. It depends on the type of trust and how it is designed. And even with a trust that you give everything to, you don't lose. You just relinquish control. You relinquish ownership, but you don't give up control. And what really is important in wealth building is control, not necessarily ownership. I can wait until later. I've heard that a lot. Later is where planning often gets more expensive, more emotional, and less flexible. So the earlier it's done is always better. So just a quick check in with everyone. Which of these myths have you heard before tonight?
The first one.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say the first one as well. And actually the last one too. I can wait, and that's because of the first one, because it's like wait to get wealthy.
I know, yeah, and we miss the fact that we already have everything. We already have everything. My mom, and I'll give you a very quick example. My mom passed away intestate, meaning she had neither a will nor a trust. And I know I kept, talking to her about it. It's like, oh, I don't have anything. She passed away in Nigeria. However, what the steps I had to take, and which we're still taking actually, to have those things, to have the estate administrators in place, cost us quite a bit. We have to deal with probate, which we would not have if, she had done some things before. So I'm going to give us a few, just a quick mini assessment. You see it on the screen. Um, I want you to score yourself quietly and give yourself 1 point for every yes in the slides that you see. Um, and I'm going to read out some of the questions here. Um, I have children or dependents. I own a home or real estate. I have life insurance. I have a business, side business, corporation or LLC. I have savings or investments I want handled intentionally. I want privacy in how my affairs are handled. I want to avoid probate where possible. I want more control over how beneficiaries receive assets. I want to preserve legacy, not just transfer money. I don't I do not currently have a complete trust centered plan. So, score reflection. 0 to 2, you may be early, but now is the time to learn. Um, if you scored yourself 3 to 5, planning should be on your near term priority list. Now, if you have 5 and above, you really need a trust conversation sooner than later. So, this is not about fear. It's not about alignment. It's about alignment, sorry. We're building, and we need to know how best to help ourselves. As we are expanding and growing, it's very important that we have these opportunities. So I want this to be reflective. I thank you all for, taking the time to listen to my talk. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, see, and stop the recording as well.